Hi, I'm Karen Sandler. I'm the Executive Director of the Software Freedom Conservancy, and I'm here to talk to you about what's up with GPL compliance. Everything open, people. I really, really, really wish I were there with you. This conference is really a cool conference, and I'm sad that I'm presenting to you from my kitchen at home in the US instead of with you there, but I'm going to do the best that I can to bring you up to speed about what we're doing and who I am. So, like a super brief introduction to me, I am an engineer turned lawyer. I am probably best known for the fact that I have a heart condition. It's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and I cannot see the source code in my own body. Going through that whole experience of having a device implanted in my body and not being able to review it, even though I was technical, and then furthermore living with the device and having it not exactly be for me. For example, I had my device unnecessarily shock me when I was pregnant just because my heart was palpitating, which is like very, very normal for someone who's pregnant. But because I had this device, my device thought I was in a dangerous heart rhythm and it shocked me, and I didn't need it to shock me. And the only way to get it to stop shocking me was to take drugs that slowed my heart rate down. Needless to say, this stood for like a lot of different propositions for me. I've talked about, actually the first time that I ever talked about my heart condition in a full length talk was in LCA in 2012, and then I gave an update in 2018. So I feel like this community, many of you are familiar with this story. But anyway, so that having that experience made me realize that, like, hang on a second, only 15% of defibrillators go to people under the age of 65. And it stood for this proposition of like, well, our technology, through like no malicious, like no ill will by the manufacturers, may simply not be made for us. We know that that our software will fail. We know that our technology will fail. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of which and when. And what can we do when that happens? This only becomes more relevant both in the medical devices space, where just this week there was attention drawn to a device called the iTear 100, which is a device that helps people generate tears who are having issues with that. And the device can stop working, the FAQ on the website says, because your prescription may have run out. So a device that you rely on, and that's not an implanted device, it's just a device that means, but any device that you may rely on may suddenly become unavailable to you because, in the US, your insurance might stop covering it, or the policies may change at the company who made that device. And for me, this, like, understanding the role that technology plays in our lives and having it literally sewn into my body and screwed into my heart made me so passionate about the safety of the software we rely on and making sure that the balance is in the right place in terms of who has control over our software and what that means for us as a society. So because of that, I work at the Software Freedom Conservancy, which is a US-based charitable organization. We do everything that is on the ethical side of software freedom and software generally. And so we have like three main areas of work that we do. One is as a fiscal sponsor, where we help alternatives to proprietary software, and we have many free software projects that are a part of our organization, like Git is one of our well-known, Inkscape. We've got tons of member projects, and that's one branch. A second branch is that we realize that, just like my story with my defibrillator, our software, unless our software is made by everyone, it won't be made for everyone. There are many examples of software that was deployed and not tested on groups of people that would rely on it. I mean, one of the famous examples is not software-based, but a soap dish a soap dispenser that didn't work on dark-colored hands, right? Those are kinds of things where you could tell that if there were people testing or people working on the product who were from those groups, that would never have made it to market or never been deployed. And so making sure that there is access to our technology, and that anyone can actually contribute is high in our priority list. And so we run Outreachy, which is a diversity initiative where we do paid remote internships for folks who are subject to systemic bias and impacted by underrepresentation. We don't say which groups qualify, but if you feel like you're subject to systemic bias or you've been impacted by underrepresentation, you should definitely look into Outreachy and consider applying. Many of the folks in the Linux Australia community have participated in Outreachy as mentors, as participants. Definitely ask around the conference if that's something that you're interested in. And then our last piece of what we do at Software Freedom Conservancy is all about software rights. And it focuses around copyleft. If you're at Everything Open, you probably know what copyleft is, and you've probably heard of the GPLs. If you haven't, I'm excited to tell you that copyleft is a license that is basically a forever free license. It gives you a right to the software that you're using, and it requires that in order to keep the software free, that if you make changes and distribute those changes, you have to do so under the same license. Detractors used to call it viral. I'm pretty sure that the GPLs were one of the reasons, and copyleft generally were one of the reasons why viral became a positive term, but I can't say that for sure. But yeah, so these copyleft licenses are in millions of devices. There are the GPLs generally, and in particular GPL v2, but also GPL v3, are in very, very wide use. They're in millions and millions of devices, and they are designed to give people rights. So I highly recommend that you take a look at these licenses, particular GPL v2. At least read the preamble. It's very inspirational, and in the preamble of GPL v2, it actually says that it's, and forgive me for reading, but that it's designed to make sure that you have the freedom to distribute copies of free software and charge for the service if you wish, that you receive source code or can get it if you want it, that you can change the software or use pieces of it in new free programs, and that you can do these things. It's very inspirational, and the license itself then goes on to grant those rights. And it requires that if folks are using software licensed under that license, that they have to give access to the source code, the complete and corresponding source code, or a written offer. And the written offer, valid for at least 3 years. And again, I'm reading a truncated version of it, to give any third party the corresponding source code. And then, in the definitions, the license says complete source code means all the source code for all the modules it contains, plus the scripts used to control compilation and installation of the executable. So we live in a world where millions of devices of all kind, come with this amazing right, the amazing right that we have to have complete and corresponding source code with the scripts to control compilation and installation. And people don't know they have these rights. It's amazing. Probably you folks here at this conference know, but even if you know, many people don't actually exercise their offers. And so I would say to you, hey, later tonight, or maybe when you go home from this conference and you're home from Gladstone and you are looking at your stuff and you see that you bought a few things, check out if they have any offers. And if they have offers, exercise those offers. And by exercise those offers, I just mean ask for the complete and corresponding source code. Unfortunately, while theoretically, all of the companies that put these offers in their materials and who are using GPL code are supposed to give you this source code, and really they know they're supposed to, and so they should have systems and processes in place for it, and you should just be asking, and it should be a no-brainer routine thing that they just say, sure, here you go. But in fact, the industry, or rather industries, are wildly out of compliance. So it is extremely rare to ask a company to exercise your offer and to ask a company for the completed corresponding source code and to get it. So when people don't get the complete and corresponding source code, they get understandably frustrated and they send reports of that noncompliance to us at Software Freedom Conservancy. And you can do that if you exercise your offer and you don't get the complete and corresponding source code. It's compliance at sfconservancy.org. And then we receive report after report of noncompliance. And so we try to deal with as many of those reports as we can. We're a very small staff and we have very, very limited resources. But we have a team and they follow up on, or I should say we, because we're so small. I'm executive director, but we're not big enough that an executive director could maybe not be involved in most of the important tasks of our organization, which is nice. I always say I'm like the luckiest cyborg lawyer ever. But so we have a team that follows up on these reports, and we do so in a really as principled a way as we can, because we are not out to get money from these companies. We are out to help them get into compliance. We hope that today's violating company is tomorrow's contributor. So we try to be like we're always focused on the ethics of the actions that we're bringing, and that always dictates what we do. We do so in a community oriented way. But it is hard because companies generally know what they're doing and they generally don't want to comply and they don't want to help us and they want to give us the runaround. They want to delay us. They want to use up our time and they definitely want to string us along until their product is end of life. So, anyway, I'll get a little bit more into the things that we do when that happens because it happens sadly all too often. But the work that we do is actually really quite inspiring. And because this is a pre recorded talk, there's no reason why I can't also introduce you to the team at Software Freedom Conservancy who does this work. So at our recent compliance meeting, I just pressed record on Big Blue Button and had everybody introduce themselves to you. So I'm going to cut over to that. So, as promised, we are just dropping in to our weekly compliance meeting at Software Freedom Conservancy. And I just thought, since this is a remote talk and I can't be there with you, it would be so much fun to introduce you to everybody on the team. We are meeting at this is our regular weekly meeting. And I thought it would be a great time to have the other members of our team introduce themselves to you. And we'll talk a little bit about what we do as an organization. So I'm going to start with Denver, who is our Director of Compliance.
So I'm Denver Gingrich, and as mentioned, I'm Director of Compliance. I kind of direct what we're doing here, and how we keep compliance in check with Conservancy's mission. So really, the goal of compliance is to give people software freedom so that they can do what they want with their devices. And so much software uses licenses under these software right to repair terms. And so much hardware contains this software out there. So many devices that you're using today. And so really what I see kind of as our goal in the compliance team here is to make sure that you are getting the software freedom that is guaranteed to you by these licenses so that you can do what you want with the software on these devices so that they can serve you and make your life better in the ways that you want. And so that you can have other people help you do that if you want or if you need that for some reason. And so that's really, what I see as what we're trying to do here. And there's a lot of specific things that we do. You've probably heard about our lawsuit against Vizio, one case where we are trying to make this happen through the courts. Unfortunately, it got to that point. Usually it doesn't, and we hope it doesn't have to get there. But anyway, this is just a long way of saying that this is what we're trying to do in the compliance team. Sometimes it looks a little bit out there in some way, like bringing the courts in and stuff like that. But it's all for this really practical goal of giving people software freedom, and so that's what I'm working for every day, and what everyone on the team is as well. So yeah, I'm just super excited to be doing this. Excited that a lot of you are excited about all of this too. And yeah, it's really great that we can talk a little bit about it here.
And Denver, Bradley and I have both been to Everything Open, but you haven't been at Everything Open. And I think this may be your first introduction to this community. How long have you been working on these issues?
Well, so I guess you could say I've been working on these issues for maybe 2 decades now. I first started doing it as part of my my job in 2011. So that's when I started at Software Freedom Conservancy. And yeah, so I've been working it for quite a while at Conservancy as well. And I'm really happy that I was able to connect with Conservancy at that time when I found a GPL violation on one of the devices that I was using, and Conservancy was very happy to help me out with that, and that's how I got connected. So I'm very, very excited that I can be part of a group like this.
And so I think we should move over to Bradley, who is the originator of this group at SFC.
So I'm Bradley Kuhn. I've met many of you. I was at the first Everything Open last year. I'm really sorry that I can't be with you all this year. I very much enjoy visiting the Australian and New Zealand free software and open source communities at your conferences there, and I really wish I could have traveled this year to be there, and I think Karen feels the same. You may have seen my talk last year about Copyleft Next, which is tangential and somewhat overlapping with the work we do here in the compliance team. I worked my first GPL enforcement action in, I believe it was 1998 or 1999, somewhere around in that period. And I've devoted the plurality of my career to getting the rights under copyleft licenses for the users that deserve them. And I'm really glad to work here with Denver, Karen, and Rick, and everyone else in that goal. Oh, I guess I should say the two members. I have to introduce them because they sleep through every one of these meetings. Down here, it's the cameras below me here. This is Jeeves and Penny sleeping in a bed under my desk, and they do not contribute very much at all. In fact, sometimes they interrupt the meeting to demand food, as it turns out.
Do they enforce the GPL at all?
I am not aware of any non-compliance by either of my dogs, and they mainly just enforce demands for food.
Quite effectively, I might add.
So let's move on to Rick. Rick is the newest member of our compliance team, and he's SFC's general counsel.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Rick Sanders, and talking to you from Nashville, Tennessee, and I've been the general counsel since early last year. And my main job is to back up this project and answer specific questions and help with legal strategies. So I'm not brought in for every single one, just a substantial minority of them.
So yeah,
so that's our.
Oh. Go ahead, Karen.
That's our team. I was wondering. I was thinking of possibly asking Denver if he was interested in talking about anything we've done recently that you're particularly proud of. I hope I'm not putting you too much on the spot, but I think there's quite a few things that we've accomplished recently. And if you can't think of it quickly, I can feed you the answers, but I think you have them ready to go.
Yeah, there are some that I'm particularly fond of. I mean, it's maybe a bit self-serving because I was the one working mostly on this project, although I had support from basically everyone else in Conservancy while working on it as well. But the thing that immediately comes to mind for me is Use the Source, which is a tool that we recently launched that allows people to submit source candidates that they receive from people distributing copylefted software. Usually these are companies. And then we post those on the Use the Source website. And then you can comment on any concerns you have with them or whether you think they're great. And they give you everything you need to repair the software on the device. And so ideally, long-term, what this is going to be is a place to collaborate on all of this software that we have received in compliance with the license, so that you can do neat stuff with it. It would be the place where you would start, the new OpenWRT for microwaves or whatever else runs Linux in the near future, probably today already. And so this is the sort of thing that we're really kind of excited about, is getting people access to this source code. And also it leads into one of the other things that I'm excited about generally is getting people to test the offers in the devices that they have, because that's one of the big things is companies will say to us, oh, well, we get a few people asking, but like we don't really care because it's only a few people. And so I think this is really a big thing that we can do to kind of help in that assessment of these companies, because people do care about this, and even if you don't use the software yourself, you may have friends that would be very interested in using it. So it's really a big help, I think, to the community generally. If you look at those devices that you have, maybe look through the manual and see if it says if you would like to receive the source code for this device per the GPL or whatever license, contact them. Let us know, and that will help us both see what's going on out there and also feed into Use the Source and what we can do with that both now and going forward.
Bradley, did you want to add anything?
Well, one of the great things about having this team, when I started doing GPL enforcement with SFC, it was not too long after its founding, and I was just a volunteer being funded by other places to sometimes work on some GPL enforcement stuff at Conservancy. Eventually, I became a full-time employee. Denver was actually our first hire to work on compliance, as he mentioned, in 2011. And now we have this whole team. I mean, admittedly, the two down here do not carry their weight. They, as I said, sleep through every meeting, but everybody else is just working all the time to enforce the GPL. And thanks to our work with Rick, we're bringing litigation again. We have the Vizio lawsuit, which Karen's probably going to talk to you more about in a few minutes. And we're continuing to really hold companies accountable when they fail to comply with the GPL. We're in an unfortunate scenario where a lot of entities get away with violating the GPL and there's no consequences, and they simply refuse to comply when we ask them. We always go to litigation as an absolute last resort, but almost everyone pushes us to the last resort. They really take well, you're just gonna have to sue us if you want your source code attitude. And I'm very glad that we can go to the courts, which is the place where in least common law countries where you go to seek justice, and that's what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. And I'm going to just continue the talk from here. But it wouldn't be a recorded talk about the work that we do without the whole team. So thanks so much, and I'll be right back with you all. I can't tell you how lucky I am to work with such amazing people. The compliance team, I mean, honestly, the whole staff of Software Freedom Conservancy is amazing, and I feel so lucky. But I'm so glad I got to introduce you to the compliance team, because they're just, each one of them is so cool. So anyway, so you got an overview of sort of what we do and how. I think that telling you about what's up with our compliance work, or I guess I said GPL enforcement. But anyway, telling you what's up with this part of the work that we do, I would be really remiss if I didn't give you an update on our biggest lawsuit. So we are we're still working on a lawsuit that we filed a couple of years ago against the TV manufacturer Vizio. Vizio is actually a very large television manufacturer in the United States. It's like if you go into a big box store that sells electronics, you'll see like the big Vizio logo in the middle of the store. So they're a really significant company. And of course, they were out of compliance. And so we realized that we needed to bring a lawsuit. We were at that point. And so unlike previous lawsuits that we had brought and that other people had brought as on behalf of copyright holders in the copylefted software, we brought the suit against Vizio as a third-party beneficiary. And what I mean by that is just as a consumer, as a customer who went into the store and bought some TVs, and those TVs were out of compliance. We didn't get the complete and corresponding source code. And so it's a really unique case. Third-party beneficiary law, I think it's similar in Australia, but in the United States, it's very established case law that if a contract specifies rights to third parties, then those third parties have a right to come into court and make sure that the parties make good on that on what they agreed to do for those third parties. And so that's just the suit that we brought. And while I don't think it's ever been brought with respect to copylefted software, the idea of bringing a third-party beneficiary suit under contract is really well trod. I guess that's a legal expression of just that it's not super unusual, especially when the contract specifically lays out those rights. And as you recall, before we did our introduction with the team, I read to you some of those provisions in GPL v2, and the GPLs generally have provisions that specifically ensure rights to third parties. And so this is a really groundbreaking suit because most of the time what happens is when you buy a device, or anybody buys a device and they see an offer for source code, they try to, if you try to exercise it, often the company will just ignore you. And they'll just let weeks and months drag on where they don't even answer your inquiry. And so a lot of the times when we get reports, like the people that filed the report never got even any response from the company. And then when they do, they give, they generally, they often give you some garbage. And it's incredibly frustrating. But if third parties can bring these lawsuits, then in fact, the people who need access to the source code have the right to get that source code as the GPLs intend. And really, so this makes a lot of sense as a mechanism for enforcement. And if we can establish that this right exists, which we believe does exist, it means that companies will have to take people seriously when they ask for their source code. Like when they ask for the complete and corresponding source code, companies will not be able to ignore us because we have we could bring a lawsuit. And so I think that this is really exciting and important work that we're doing. Another piece about this case that's really interesting is that instead of a normal or other lawsuits where ultimately people are squabbling over some money, because what we're saying is that as a third party, we have a right to the complete and corresponding source code. The remedy that comes along with that is actually the complete and corresponding source code itself. And the idea under law is called specific performance. And the idea is that when there's something unique that the parties can't get otherwise, that you can ask for that remedy in the court, that result of actually getting the thing. And so this is really common in the US for things like real estate, where there's like a unique piece of land and you can't buy it anywhere else because it's in one specific place. And so this case that we've brought is really unique, not just for the third party beneficiary, but also because we're asking for specific performance. So really exciting and interesting stuff. I know it's my own work, so it's weird to say that, but I hope you see that too. And so litigation is long. This has been taking what seems like forever. I know if you follow this, you're probably like, what? That's still happening? Well, it is. It's been a long road, all the longer because Vizio has done everything they can to draw it out and make it harder for us to continue, which is normal for litigation strategy. And so it's not totally unexpected, but it is still nonetheless frustrating. First, Vizio tried to remove the suit to federal court. So first they said, these people are bringing a contract case in state law, basically as third-party beneficiaries, but this is a copyright license, and so in fact this matter is covered by copyright, in which case, and not contract, in which case this should be covered by federal law. And so they removed the case to federal law, and then argued in federal court that not only was the cause of action preempted by copyright and that we don't have a right under contract, which really doesn't make a lot of sense, but they argued not only that, but that because that was the case, the whole case should be dismissed because we don't have standing, because we're not asserting any rights as copyright holders. So it was like a whole 1-2 punch they tried to do, and so a federal judge in the U.S. actually looked at this and decided that in fact we could have a claim and that there was a lot of merit to it, and so she remanded that back to state court, which is where we are back again. But that was a whole process where we had a hearing, and then we went back into state court, and then Vizio filed a motion to dismiss in state court, saying basically the same things, that was preempted by copyright, even though the federal judge already found that it wasn't necessarily, and then also saying that we didn't have a right as third-party beneficiaries. And the judge throughout dismissed their motion for summary judgment, and did so with really eloquent language. She said that allowing third parties such as SFC to enforce their rights to receive source code is not only consistent with the GPL's objectives, it is both essential and necessary to achieve these goals. Recipients of GPL licensed software will be assured of their right to receive source code only if they have standing to enforce that right. So, really powerful language coming from the judge, but it's still early. The Vizio tried to appeal that dismissal, but the appeals court wasn't interested, and so now we're gearing up for trial, which will hopefully be over the summer. So that's where we are with the Vizio case. We'll see. It's groundbreaking litigation. Litigation is always unpredictable, but I'm hopeful. We have a great team and a great case, and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, we are doing more enforcement out in the community, as Denver said. We're super excited about Use the Source that Denver introduced us to just before. If you want to check it out, it's sfconservancy.org/use the source. And there you can find out how to upload a candidate if you've received source code that you think isn't quite right. But you can also take a look at candidates that are already there and some of the analysis that's there. So you can see, basically, we have a lot of expertise about how to evaluate whether source code is complete and corresponding. And we realized that keeping that information just with SFC is not really in the spirit of how we want to do this work. And more importantly, we're software freedom people. Our goal is to share the information that we have and to do things as much as possible as a community. And so you can join that community and you can see how we're doing this work transparently, and you can do it yourself. So I think what's really cool about that is that ultimately we're going to get candidates that are complete and corresponding there, and then we can start working on helping people use that source code and to do cool things with the stuff they own, which is the whole point of software freedom. So I'm very, very excited about that. I think that, another thing about the Use the Source website is that if you work for a company, you can register with us, and then if we get a source candidate from your company, we'll contact you about it, and then you'll have a chance to give us to look at it and to say, oh, actually, that's not the candidate that we meant to send. There's a mistake. It wasn't the right one, and we'll put up a new candidate. So definitely, if you work at a company and you distribute source, you'll definitely want to register there so that you have a chance to see what we're going to put up before we do it. But otherwise, we're not saying that candidates that we put up are out of compliance. We're not saying they're in compliance. There's just analysis on it. So super exciting though. And I really hope that ultimately we're going to get these communities that will pop up that are able to actually use the source. An example is we have a Think Penguin mini router on there that you can see Denver's analysis on, and it's pretty exciting. So definitely check that out. I mean, we're always looking for new ways to bolster your rights to the software you rely on. That is why we're here. That is our whole goal. We've been more active in the international right to repair community, helping folks that are focused on hardware understand that copyleft is the software right to repair. And so building bridges there and really acting in a support capacity, because ultimately there are so many effective people who are out there talking about why we need to repair our technology. And so getting them to understand how software fits into that and how it's an ever-growing important part of that work has been just transformative and really, really exciting. So that's another thing that we've been focusing on at Software Freedom Conservancy. So definitely check out Use the Source. Stay tuned for more news about Visio and our other work. And please, 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 if you can, become a supporter. Actually, we call it a sustainer of Software Freedom Conservancy. This work that we do is really expensive. It's just very resource intensive, aside from just the fees that we have to pay to be in courts. The litigation fee expenses are just astronomical. And ethically, if to do this work ethically, there is no real revenue model other than people who understand that this work is important donate to us. It's very hard to make that math work out. So if you can, we would just we'd so appreciate it. It will just keep us going. Aside from the fact that it's just a vote of confidence, which really goes a long way. Many of the people in the Linux Australia community are sustainers already. And when we see those donations come in, we just really, really smile. Anyway, we're so grateful for your support and that you're a part of our community. And I guess that, so I should say it's sfconservancy.org/sustainer or donate. Just go to the website. It's very, very easy. You're all very savvy. You know what to do. And I guess that's it for me. I wish I could be there to do Q&A, but this is scheduled at 3 o'clock in the morning for me. And I can't. I'm sorry. But know that I wish I could just talk to you and take your questions and talk about this work. And I really hope that we can do so at another time, at another conference, maybe at a future Everything Open. But if you see Ben Sternfels, give him a high five, because he's been doing some work with us and he's very, very cool. So definitely do that. Anyway, it was so lovely talking with you. Feel free to email us, and I hope to see you soon.